Okay, I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about the Sudbury model. I think it's important for me to do this to first give clarity. I'm not an expert or, I guess, a scholar on it. And I'm saying that because my school is not purely Sudbury, and it's not something that I'm actually all that thrilled about. It's something I'm very honest about with everyone who knows me, my students, my parents, my family. They all know that deep down within the depths of my being, I just think children should be set free. As a Christian parent, I guess I would say the only way they may not seem to be free is in the context of reading our Bibles, raising our children to understand their faith, and that also falls outside of Sudbury because Sudbury feels that children should really that process should also be very organic and they're choosing their faith path completely on their own. And I'm not going to get into a debate on why I don't choose to do it that way, except that as a Christian, I have to follow certain commands. And there's a command in Deuteronomy that says I have to teach the word of God to my children. So that is the only teaching command in the scripture that I see, teaching them who, what their faith is and who God has called them to be. Outside of that, with their gifts, their talents, their passions, their interests, the things they enjoy doing, and just exploring life, I believe that children should be totally free. Why am I not totally free? Well, first thing is my husband just wasn't having it. And um, I really adore my husband, and he's the most wonderful man to me on the planet. I was not willing to sacrifice my relationship with him to do a philosophy that he wasn't agreeing with. Well, also think one thing that makes him very wonderful is he's also though wonderful about compromise. He's very easy to talk to and debate with and communicate with. He can see my heart, I can see his heart. That's the nature of our relationship, which is important because we're both very strong-willed people. Um, so through lots of arguing, some pretty intense arguments, but continuing to fight through that, we came up with a compromise where the school would be half Sudbury, half classical, and the two never the twain shall meet. Like they do not connect. I don't try to mix classical with Sudbury. I don't try to mix the philosophies. And I did that intentional to try to preserve the purity of the Sudbury model. And the way that looks is this. They are in formal classes, which are all classical for just the very first half of the day with lots of breaks in between. In the last half of the day, they're free. And then that schedule is only Monday through Wednesday. Thursdays and Fridays, they're free to go to elective classes if they want to. They don't have to. And then Friday, there are no elective classes. We just go outside and go hiking, but that's optional too. Um, and we have found that they're still learning and growing, and they're still reaping the benefits that Sudbury has to offer. I've also found that many people have such trust issues with the free philosophy, they don't see it through to the end. So I hope I'm not being presumptuous in saying this, that I have found that families who are 100% supportive of the Sudbury model and see it through to graduation, just in my own independent research as I was trying to find the best philosophy for my children, the children who grow up and finish Sudbury tend to be very successful people. Of course, like anything, no one's perfect. There may be some outliers with that, but uh, I haven't seen those who finish. I'm not talking about those who left. I'm talking about those who started and were raised up in it and finished. Tend to be very successful. And so those are the only stories I've heard. If there are outliers, which with everything there is, there may be, and that success comes from when a child is left alone, they learn to problem solve, they learn how to relate to people, they learn how to navigate this world for themselves. So let me give you a good example. My daughter is 6, and she wanted tea or something to drink, a hot drink. And she had class online, and she went into the kitchen at 6, boiled her hot water, poured herself that hot drink, sat down at her class, and was drinking this hot drink and never got burned. Why am I sharing that example with you? I personally feel that adults tend to insert themselves in children's lives so much that we handicap them from learning how to navigate this world for themselves. And so, the book that I have held dear to my heart is Free at Last, written by Daniel Greenberg. I read it, I keep it out, it's always near me. I refer to it for constant encouragement. And the I guess, medical scientific support that I've often run to support my views on this are the writings of Peter Gray, that he often writes on this model at Psychology Today. And I hold tight to him as well. And I've come to be at peace with the fact that my school is not fully Sudbury, so it's mostly Sudbury, and I'm very honest about that. Within our school, however, there are quite a few of us. There's several of us who don't ever check our kids' work. We never check up to see if they're doing their homework, or we don't care about. We've opted actually out of having a report card. Our kids are literally just in the school doing what they want, and they actually tend to do the work on their. They do the work on their own, and they're thriving. And we discovered the other day that our son learned fractions, and we don't even know how he learned it. He doesn't even know how he learned it. His teacher said she didn't teach it to him. He said he just got the book and figured it out himself. And so, all that being said, I have witnessed with all three of my children the beauty of the Sudbury model. Another reason why I can't implement it purely in my area is, and this is not a slight against the African American community. I try to always be careful not to sound like I'm talking against my community, but my views on this are very strong. So from slavery even until present day, there is a struggle with Black people to experience what freedom really looks like. And so bringing the Sudbury model to that community is a challenge because of how oppressed we have been. So bringing the pure Sudbury model to a completely African American community was almost impossible. So it was really actually necessary for me to compromise and do a half and half, because I was just that desperate to bring freedom into my community. What has grown out of that is families who have now decided to completely let go of their child's journey in life, but they're still in the school. And has also allowed me to bring this philosophy to parents who may not agree with the Sudbury model, see some benefits of it, and their children get it on some level. My prayer is that one day I'll get there, or maybe I'll open another one separate from this one that's totally free. Most likely not, because my life is already crazy enough as it is, but I just like to be upfront about that. And so I'll be doing a series of videos about the Sudbury model, what I feel about it, why I feel like something that's extremely important for the Black community beyond classical education. I think classical education is important because of our literacy struggles, and our literacy struggles come from the education that has often been withheld from our communities in its schools. But they gain a literacy through learning Latin, reading the great works, so they can navigate this world freely even better as a people. So I feel like the two connect well, just they shouldn't be mixed. So I don't mix them, but giving them a touch of each, I think, is a nice little package. Even though I had to get there through ways I didn't necessarily like, I feel like God is using it to really provide, I feel, a really ideal educational experience for my children and for other African American children. If you're listening to this, and no matter who you are, what your cultural background is, ethnic background is, I believe this is something for everyone. I believe the Sudbury model is for everyone. I feel like the way that I've seen my students and especially my children's minds work, the way they're able to just take care of themselves and do life, the way they're kind-hearted, compassionate. The emphasis hasn't been on academics. The emphasis has been on their whole person and just knowing how to be a good person in the world. And from that, though, the byproduct has been an intellectual strength that I've seen develop in them as well. So I encourage you to check out the Sudbury model. And if you have a better situation than I do and can implement it in all of its full glory, I commend you. If you are a Christian like I am and you feel like you want to do it, but maybe you feel like somehow it contradicts what God says about raising children, I want to encourage you that it really doesn't. The only thing that may be a slight difference is that we are commanded to teach the Bible to our children. So I have just made a commitment that is the main thing that I commit to as far as setting a structure, but that's usually done first thing in the morning. And I do it in a way where they read for themselves and tell me what they feel God is telling them, instead of teaching them to memorize verses. We don't memorize verses or anything like that. There is no catechism. there's no chance that they have to do to, and my children know the word and they love the word. And because I started out with them reading the word for themselves, um, they have developed their own relationship with the Lord. And I also do it in a way where I've told them from the beginning, if you don't become a Christian, I will always love you and I will never reject you, even if you choose not to live this way. I tell them that from the beginning, and that really freed them up to explore it for themselves, and they on their own came to put their faith in the Lord and are growing in their own way in the Lord. And so that pressure of having to perform spiritually for me, that's also inspired by the Sudbury model. So that's just some other background information, and maybe I'll do a full presentation on that at a later time, but I hope this little video was helpful.